Thank you, and thank you everybody for being with us today. So as you know, this roundtable is organized by the International Institute of Ethics and Contemporary Issues of the Ukrainian Catholic University in cooperation with the Eparchy of Saint Volodymyr the Great of Paris, of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. My name is Olga. I am a member of this Eparchy in charge of strategic planning, coordination. And today our topic will be the following: the Church and the need for new social ethics. We are privileged to have 7 participants in this roundtable who are members of the board of the International Institute for Ethics and Contemporary Issues. We also had 37 registered listeners on Zoom, so they are arriving progressively. Also, we are live streamed on Facebook, and we are recorded too. And as a starting point, we actually chose a documentary movie, a movie that most of you have already watched, and if not, I really encourage you to do so, because it describes the life of the Eparchy of Saint Volodymyr the Great of Paris. It was released a month ago, and this movie will be a starting point for us to discuss the Church and the need for new social ethics. So we will have approximately 1 hour from now, and every participant will have roughly 5 minutes to speak. In the meantime, the listeners can send their questions. You can use the public chat of our Zoom discussion, or you can use Facebook comments, and we will save the questions until the end of our discussion. Also, let us bear in mind that we come from various countries, and it's a pleasure to welcome people from Ukraine, from France, from Poland, the United States, India. So it's really nice to have you here, and I'm really privileged to be the moderator of this meeting. So maybe I should very briefly introduce the 7 participants. Most of you already, some of you already know some of them or all of them. So we have with us tonight Archbishop Boris Gudziak, President of the Ukrainian Catholic University, and Archbishop and Metropolitan of Philadelphia of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in the United States. Also, we have Oleh Turiy, who is the Vice-Rector for Program Development at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv. We have Alois Buch, Deacon Alois Buch, who is the Dean for St. Lambert Interdiocesan Major Seminary in Lantershofen, Germany. We have Andriy Kostiuk, partner at Pavlenko and Partners, attorneys at law in Lviv, in Ukraine. Peter McCormick, Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and a permanent member of the Institut International de Philosophie in Paris. And Volodymyr Turchynovskyy, who is the director of the International Institute of Ethics and Contemporary Issues and Dean of the Social Sciences Faculty of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And of course, we have Czeslaw Poremski from Jagiellonian University in Krakow, in Poland. Unfortunately, we could not be joined by Jose Casanova and Edward Allen, but our thoughts and solidarity are with them. So thank you again, and maybe now I should give the floor to Volodymyr, the director of the Institute, who will tell us a bit more about the scope of this roundtable. Because our meeting today is actually an encounter between 2 communities. The community of the Ukrainian Eparchy of Paris and the community of the International Institute of Ethics and Contemporary Issues. So Volodymyr, what is the link between the 2 communities, and what is the link between the movie, the documentary, and the priorities of the Institute. Please. Volodymyr? Volodymyr, can you unmute your microphone?
Yes, indeed. Well, I apologize for that. And yeah, thank you all very much for your very kind introduction. I'm happy to be here today. I didn't really know what here means in this context, but still it's a pleasure to see you all and enjoy this conversation. Just a few thoughts kind of responding order to your question. Well, I'm wondering what my connection is to the Eparchy of Saint Volodymyr the Great. Well, I think that the simplest way for me to describe it would be this. I was privileged by having a chance to experience hospitality of Bishop Boris and his community, and hopefully by contributing in some very modest way to a culture and spirituality which this community was eagerly and joyfully, as it always seemed to me, cultivating. Well, I'd like to articulate a few ideas which were repeatedly coming to my mind as I was watching the film. I mentioned a culture of hospitality already. Let me move on by trying to bridge Oleh's question with some intuitions I draw from the film. Well, 3 years ago, we at the Institute decided to start a long-term project, which we named Integral Human Development in the Digital Age. To put it somewhat oversimplified, I think behind this concept, there was an idea of telling a story of a human person in the 21st century. I believe that the digital world gives us a very powerful way of thinking what an idea of development might be. Yet, there's also a way of thinking about development in terms of human ecology or integral development. Well, these two ways of thinking about development were truly important elements of the story we were thinking of exploring and unfolding. However, I believe that the pandemics has vividly introduced some other components for us to consider. On a global scale, mediated by the digital world, we are confronting our physical vulnerability and a sense of our moral fragility, along with a call to respond in a dignified and moral way. While thinking of this moral moment, I'd like to share an intuition which has shaped and defined our primary objective for Ukrainian Catholic University 2025 strategy. It is captured by defining UCU as a serving university. Our strategy was approved by our Board of Trustees in September of 2019, and exactly on the same September of 2019, Pope Francis, as he was announcing his new initiative on a global compact on education, has made a statement which resonates so well with our vision. The Pope has emphasized that, quote, the true service of education is education to service. I do believe that the true service should be an important part of the story we want to live through in the 21st century. I think this film and what the film conveys to us is about a profound dignity of both attitudes, serving other and being served by somebody. I think that film, which brought us to this digital roundtable, is a story itself, which is animated by an idea and practice of pilgrimage. And by the way, I think that every authentic story imitates a pilgrimage, even if in some hidden and implicit way. An idea of pilgrimage creates a space for history and thereof for the future, which isn't just a bunch of his stories or her stories, but there is a way in which these stories become our history, carried for years and for generations. Pilgrimage, by definition, can be a lonely event. Perhaps we could think of pilgrimage of proceeding together as a new ethical category we might wish to explore. as we are trying to articulate a story of human life in the midst of pandemics. It's curious, though, that the social distancing, which has become a substitute for physical distancing, is seen as a main remedy under present circumstances. Well, it's also interesting that the film is about bridging the social distancing in a move which Bishop Boris has defined as a movement from heart to heart. Well, let me stop with this and give a word back to you, Oleh. Thank you.
Thank you, Volodymyr, for this introduction. And you spoke about pilgrimage, being a pilgrim. So maybe we should give the floor to a very frequent pilgrim to the Eparchy, Deacon Alois Buch, who has been a very close friend of our Eparchy and our advisor on many aspects. And also Alois appears in the movie, and he speaks about synodality as practiced in this eparchy. So maybe Alois, you could share with us some more details on synodality, and how can synodality be actually practiced in this time of social distancing and virtuality, virtual relationships?
Yes, I can say very few words about that. I actually wanted to start by saying it's a great movie, giving a really good impression of what has been achieved over the last years in trying also to say connect with life around your eparchy, and synodality is part of that. My feeling was that the whole movie is actually a token of what synodality can mean. So though the bishop was speaking, but only giving, so to say, the explanation of what is happening and giving a little bit the orientation, so to say, the guidelines, it was a very, very interactive movie, giving space to all those who can and would like to contribute to the pastoral life, to the action of the church, to the activities, to the ministry, to the services. And this is actually what synodality, in my understanding, means. And it's not my understanding only, it's also, as far as I understand, the understanding, as I said at the end of the movie. I didn't know that you would include that statement in the movie, but you may remember that Pope Francis made this a kind of a programmatic point of his pontificate. Yes, on occasion of the celebration of the 50th start of post-Vatican II bishops' synods, worldwide bishop synods, he made that statement that synodality has to be invented, a basic not only methodology but way of life of the church in the future. And talking about our topic tonight, which is the church and the need of new social ethics, my feeling is that synodality perfectly fits to this topic. By the way, for the Pope, the interesting thing, the funny thing is that, and most interesting thing is that he was not talking about the Eastern churches primarily, because synodality is something which is part, the sobor, is part of your identity and of your life. He made this the topic for the entire church. So it's quite a challenge for the Westerners. If I may finish with saying this, I was very touched by two statements. One of them which are in the movie. I mean, the first one, Peter, an immigrant with the most important mission, message, and motivation. This is something which is very close connected, according to me, to our next topic of the IECI series, because we would like to talk about AI and poverty and so on and so on. Also talking about what it means for immigrants and discriminated people who are not, so to say, fully integrated. But two statements, and the one is, we are called to live in relations with others. So connectedness. So this is actually an issue of artificial intelligence as well as of how to reach out to people in the pastoral field. So this is a great contribution, according to me, an approach how to talk positively about AI, to make use of it, and to see at the same time the pros and the risks. And the second was, in the information age, we need calm. Here, I think is really the bridge which makes the topic of tonight, according to me, an inspiring topic for the further discussions of IECI in looking and trying to find points of connection to talk about, say, a program of new ethics in the AI era. Thank you.
Thank you, Alois. And by the way, the title of the documentary is actually Synodality in Action, Stories from the Life of the Paris Eparchy. So the director of the film, Petro Didula, who did a wonderful job, he is part of UKU teams, actually tried to tell a consistent story, a mosaics, a selection of stories, but that form a single consistent story. And the main tune of the story is actually synodality, togetherness, and connectedness, as you said, Alois. I have a question for Andriy Kostiuk, who visited our eparchy many times too. And Andriy, you have seen a lot of aspects of our eparchial life from inside. You actually personally contributed to our projects. You personally supported our eparchy in France. So when you watched this documentary, actually, did you watch it?
Yes, I did. It's a good one.
So did anything surprise you or maybe inspire you? And you have a lot of practical experience with our eparchy. So how could this practical experience probably help academic research on ethics and on Christian social teaching?
Thank you, Oleh. Basically, I am inspired about what happened in your eparchy during the last years, because I was able to see the beginning of the period when Bishop Boris was appointed there, and then the last months is when he was basically already appointed in the Philadelphia. So we see a lot of differences, and we see movement process. Yeah. So for me, the most inspiring thing is to see these dynamics, how people can build the community from very small circle, from almost out of nothing. Of course, the eparchy was existing already, but in a sense, the community was to be whatever, restored, rebuilt, restarted. This was kind of spiritual startup for me, and it was very interesting to see how it develops. And basically, yeah, this movie picks very rightly the key points, what were the strong sides, what made the biggest impression on people which visited, this sense of community, of staying connected, of staying together, basically enjoying to be together, trying to listen to each other, trying to assist each other, communicating with each other about different issues, and yeah, enjoying the company of each other. So this is basically what we think the first Christians in the communities of Apostle Paul were doing, and what attracted other people. Yeah. So this spirit of first Christianity, especially in such a secularized country as France, was in a sense very, very strong, yeah, from whatever subjective point of view. Another thing was how you overcome difficulties, yeah, because in a sense difficulties shape. They shape us either in our informed optimism, in our trying to overcome them and to build out of them, or they throw us into a sort of pessimism and sometimes coerced, sometimes relaxed, sitting and whatever, closing inside without possibility to be touched by other people. So in that sense, from the very beginning, the difficulties shaped this eparchy, and it was really the feeling that if you do something, if you really assist something, it will be multiplied. It will be not just your effort, somebody will join you and you will see the real results of this. So next item for me is how people connected teaching and showing the life, like basically the niveau of this teaching. Starting from, of course, the leader of the eparchy, Bishop Boris, but also the priests, those living in the house, those starting new small parishes, young priests just came from Ukraine with weak languages, sometimes without French language at all, how they were dedicated to their vocation, to the project of this eparchy standing out of nothing to whatever real circle. So now for me, I do really feel that it's a big achievement for the last 6 years, but for me are two next biggest questions for you. How will you keep connected, and how you stay open to other people who shall join you in order that the community develops further? Yeah? Because we know that not all the startups are so nice anymore if they develop in big corporations. Unfortunately, about some spiritual communities, we can say this, because the history of Christianity teaches us that sometimes small communities, when they become big institutions, first thing which they lose is this living communal feeling.
Andriy, we cannot hear you. I think your microphone went off.
Now back?
Much better.
Much better? I can see you. Thank you, Oleh. So basically, yeah, so for me, this spiritual development, if you will become big, is very important. So that to keep the spirit of this inner circle, in a sense, but at the same time to stay open to invite other people to join the circle, and never become too much corporation, too much institution, always stay in the living community of people. So this is what I feel about the eparchy, and this is what I would like you to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Andriy, for your comments and very wise advice and lessons that you give us. And they are very relevant indeed. But I should say that probably without your assistance and the assistance of the Ukrainian Catholic University, maybe the history of our eparchy would have been quite different in the recent years. You and the UKU and the IECI were here at the inception of our eparchy. I remember the first conference organized by the eparchy in October 2013, which is almost 7 years ago, was actually a conference of the IECI. And I think all of you, all of the board members who are here now actually attended and helped us start something new and make a new offer, a new product, right? Like a startup, just to borrow your vocabulary, Andriy. I think you played a very big role, and I hope that we can learn more from UKU on how to become big and not lose this spirit of being a family, being connected, and being in solidarity. So thank you very much. Oleh, Turiy, can you hear us okay?
Yes. Hello.
You are an expert on the Eastern Catholic churches. And the documentary that we watched actually shows an Eastern church in the diaspora, in Western Europe. Maybe you could tell us how the Eastern churches could make a contribution in the Western societies in terms of ethics and social teaching. What is specific about the witness of the Eastern churches?
No, this is very big questions for me. I think it's topic for another seminar or big conference. I apologize for my not very good English, and I will try to express my my point of view about this movie and also life of your eparchy. But first of all, I really, if I watch this movie, I really remember the time as I start to work together, not with Bishop Boris, but simply with Boris from US at the development of Institute of Church History. It was first small institution which was created in Ukraine after these changes in Eastern of Europe. And then of the basis of Institute, we developed the Theological Academy and Ukrainian Catholic University. And what is really for me very impressive, this spirit of friendship, this connection between spirituality and intellectual life, this trust and cooperation between people. They work together for common good and for something new. And this is really, for me, a historian, is really interesting to see how you can take part in creation of history of institution, history of eparchy. I am historian. You asked me about church. But church it's not only structure. It's people, and I think what is really similar between these different institutions, and especially for me, historians, is exactly what connect the people, what give them the motivation. And I think in our time, very important, if we speak about post-true world and another things, it's very important for church, for leaders, for institutions to be authentically, to not to play the role, but really to be, and to be in development and to be in this common work. And if I can say some words about to your question, for Eastern Christians, for us, especially for Ukrainian Christians, through this big migration, emigration from Ukraine, also through this historical experience, it's really very important to play this role of uniting the different people. Our church belongs to family of Catholic churches, but has this Eastern Byzantine rite. And I think exactly this possibility to see the plurality in unity of the church. This is something what we can bring to Western Christianity, to more pluralistical, and in this way also more synodal way of church life today. I think I should stop at this point now. Maybe we can, in our discussion, some specific questions more broadly, talk more broadly.
Thank you very much, Oleh. Right now, we are live on Facebook, and 30 people are watching us live. And we have, how many? At least 20 people with us on Zoom. So some of us are well familiar with the social teaching of the Church, with synodality and other notions. But there is a notion which is fundamental to the social teaching of the Catholic Church, which is subsidiarity. And let me introduce this topic with Czesław Porębski. Maybe, Czesław, you could tell our audience on Zoom and on Facebook more about subsidiarity and how it can serve the new social ethics, how it can serve the society in the 21st century.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the film, because it seems to me this is quite an achievement. So congratulations to the director and the producers. It's really something. It's not just a report. There are also quite many, I would say, artistic ingredients in the film. What I learned from that film, by way of some more general formulas, is how to make in many languages you have something that perhaps best which the best formulations you have in German. Aus der not eine Tugend macht. It starts with the very beginning, namely, Andriy said it was a start. This Eparchy was a start, and from the very beginning, the history of that eparchy may be the illustration of what subsidiarity is. You have the archbishop there, the head of the eparchy, but he lets the all people around him to do their best by way of the contribution to that startup, without interfering too much with them. You say, someone says in that film that he leaves every now and then, leaves the door of that house of the eparchy open, and anyone can enter and anyone can contribute to that construction. It was first the construction side. From the very beginning, I had that feeling that there is a kind of experiment, but it's not a 50% an experiment. It was the application of the principle of subsidiarity. The principle of subsidiarity consists in saying, let people do what they can best, as far as they manage to do that. Be that your children, be that the members of your community, political community, be that the members of the religious community, whatever can be done by people who are, effective, good-willing members of the community, they should be allowed to do that. But at the very moment you see, as someone who stands somewhat higher in the hierarchy of the organizational scheme of the community, take the bishop, for example, you should try to help that member to do what he's supposed to do if he fails to see the right point. So that's the way any structure, be that political community, social community, be that family, be that school, be that monastic community, can work. And it is a very old wisdom. The very beginnings of that story of subsidiarity goes back to Aristotle and people like that. But from that time on, there were many people whom we might regard as contributors to that tradition of subsidiarity. If I may go back to that film once again, and that will be the end of my that part of my contribution. I would like to stress that point that probably is best seen in that section of the film devoted to Segolen. You remember that the father-in-law of Segolen mentions Holodomor, that red famine, to use the term of an apple. And then you have the next scene is the Ukrainians going to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, singing Marseillaise there to commemorate the people of Ukraine who died because of that red famine in the 30s of the 20th century. And then the next thing is, again, the Ukrainian community is marching to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And what's the comment from seems to me it's from Bishop Boris. We are supposed not only to celebrate, to commemorate to the victims of that national catastrophe, which was the panic, but we are also supposed to celebrate our lives. It's a life-giving experience. So, to go back to that German saying, aus einer Not Tugend zu machen, from the handicap to make the advantage, from the dispersion of the diaspora of your eparchy to make a contribution to what is going on in the wider world, in a global perspective. This is the ambition which I admire. Such a small community, so dispersed, but with that ambition. In Saint-Lys, someone says, for example, we can't transfer Russia to South Africa, but we are challenged to transform Russia. Once again, what an ambition! But what a hope in such a saying. So, for the time being, thank you.
Thank you, Czeslaw. Thank you so much. I can see that we are joined by Petro Didula, who is the director and the cameraman of the movie, and who received so many compliments today from Germany, from Poland. So we also have Mariana Karapinka with us, who is a co-producer of the movie. So the team is here, and it's really heartwarming to hear your nice comments. And definitely the credit for the artistic quality of the movie goes to Petro, and the credit for the general message of the movie goes to Petro, because he shot the movie at the grass level, as Mariana put it. He was not on a helicopter. He was in the grass. He was with us. He was living with us. He was traveling in our eparchy, and he brought an external view, but also an internal view of this eparchy. So if you have other comments or questions for Petro or Mariana, you'll be able to express them.
That's the final section, synodality in action. I'm lost about you know the numbers. The Parisian eparchy, so to speak, covers 5 countries. But then speaking about that Sobor in Shepton, I learned that 11 countries are represented there, that 7 languages are being spoken there. So how come that you have 11 countries in Shepton, whereas you are obliged only to work for 5 countries? So you are working for more countries than just what you are, so to speak, described to work officially. So small point, but a point of clarification. Thank you.
Maybe this is a question for Deacon Alois Buch, who was several times at our Sobors and can explain this strange phenomenon. Maybe you could unmute your microphone, Alois, please.
No, I was it. No. I didn't actually fully get the context of the question of Viacheslav Trojemsky, because unfortunately the line with him is not that good. If I understood well, the question was, though the Eparchy is actually reaching out to, say, 5, 6 countries, how came that there were representatives from, say, 11 or 12 countries or so, as it was said in the documentary? It's a very simple thing, because this synodality is well understood as reaching out not only in terms of, so to say, the parishioners and the faithful that belong to, that was my understanding, that belong to the Eparchy as such, but to make, as it is already said in the Bible, in the Old Testament and New Testament, look for advice and for community with others, with outsiders. And what I understood was that there were representatives from all kinds of countries that were invited, to share a few days of community life, of eparchial life, and also to contribute, say, if they were asked and invited, their own views on, say, what the program or the programmatic issue of those days was. I don't know if I got the point.
Thank you, Alois. Thank you very much. Also, Czeslaw mentioned Sigolène, who is the main character of one of the movie parts, and she's also watching us online today. So she will be happy to have your feedback, Czeslaw. And as the Eparchy is welcoming external guests at its Sobors, the Eparchy has friends in various countries, and we have a question right now coming from our neighbors in London, in Great Britain. So we have a question from Peter Pidiarkiewski-Bekar, and he says, one strand of an Eparchy is its number of vocations. I am a seminarian of the London Eparchy. I would be interested in knowing answers to the following 2 questions. So how many seminarians are there in the French Eparchy across all the countries? And how many seminarians were born in the territory of the Eparchy? Thank you, Peter, for your question. Today in 2020, we have 7 seminarians who study in French or Belgian seminaries, but who were sent to the seminaries by the Ukrainian Eparchy of Paris. So we have 5 in France and 2 in Belgium. And one of them was born in, he wasn't born in the territory of the Eparchy because he was born in Austria, but his family actually lives in Belgium since, they have been in Belgium for 25 years now. And so Andreas, who is a seminarian, has a Belgian nationality, and French is almost his native language. And he actually studies in Paris. And his father is a priest in Belgium, Father Adam, and Andreas is preparing to serve our people in our Eparchy. I hope this answers your question. Do we have other questions? We have 28 participants on Facebook and 28 on Zoom and 33 on Facebook. And we have one comment on Facebook from Anna Spuk, who says, my husband and I visited Paris for the first time in 2014, and we stopped by the Eparchy of Saint Volodymyr the Great. I remember being touched how we were welcomed, and it felt like a family. Looking forward to watching the movie. Thank you, Anna. So you can find the movie on the Facebook page of our event, and also on the website of the Eparchy and the Facebook page of the Eparchy. Myroslav Marynovych.
Thank you. Glory to Christ. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you. Before putting question, let me give you two ideas about the Paris Eparchy and the transformation of this Eparchy. It seems to me that it was a confirmation of well-known principles, well-known experience of our church, which existed from the very beginning. First of all, that we need only a few people to make difference. And we need only a few people to bring hope back to disappointed community, to bring hope back to people who do not have such hope anymore. So this was the miracle, the smallest eparchy in our church, probably the smallest. And immediately there was a miracle of transformation of this eparchy. Then a second point was very important for me, that the vision of transformation is more important than the number of people involved. It is my way to answer the question about seminarians. What is the number of seminarians? No matter. What is the number of people inspired? That's the question. That's the very issue. So my question to all the speakers, but it was more logic for the question to Bishop Boris, Archbishop Boris. The question about the connection between vision and number of people inspired. Am I right? Do you felt some limitations having a very small number of people around you, or you approve my suggestion that the existence of vision is more important? Thank you.
Who is the question for, Myroslav?
I told to all the speakers, but more logic is the question to Metropolitan Boris.
I will register that question, Myroslav. Maybe there are other questions, because I understand Olga said I will speak at the end. So let me register that question. I think there's a question from Kun Jacobs, Olga, on Facebook.
Thank you, Archbishop.
At least.
Let me just refresh the Facebook page.
It might be on my page, actually.
Yeah, I cannot see this in the event page, but maybe you could read it aloud.
Roman Catholic dioceses show interest to study or copy the subordinates of the Eparchy. Maybe, Olga, you can answer.
I apologize. Could you read the question again?
Did Roman Catholic dioceses show any interest in the Sobornost of the Paris Eparchy?
This is definitely something that Deacon Alois could contribute on, because he produced a paper on synodality based on his empirical observations of the Eparchy of Paris and his knowledge of the Latin Rite Church. Alois, could you tell us more about that?
I got your question, but I didn't get the first one.
Did the synodality as it was practiced in the Eparchy of Paris inspire Latin Rite dioceses?
Actually, I mean, this is a long story. This is really an evening filling topic. Just to so to say, to answer in a very concrete way. What we are lacking in the Western Catholic Church, in the Roman Catholic Church, is say a profound methodology and a profound spirituality of exchange about faith, about the vision and the mission where we are called to go as a church nowadays. And this is simply due to an understanding of the church which is not a counter model of synodality, but in which, say, the togetherness and the real exchange between faithful and hierarchy, priests and lay, and so on, women and men, was not that elaborated, say, globally speaking. Is a big difference in some churches like in Africa and so on and so on. In my own church in Germany, we are, so to say, and I would like to connect the question of with regard to the Western synodality with Myroslav's remark concerning numbers. We are actually facing exactly the opposite. Say my local church, so to say, the German church, currently officially 22 million faithful. We are coming from the other end of the story, so to say, or of the development. We are now step by step becoming smaller in numbers. And I think this is not the better situation to try to open up for the future and to find out again, to try to discover where we are called to. So what we are doing now is, and this is the concrete point, apparently not only in Germany, also in other countries like Austria, France, and wheresoever in Europe, at least I can see that, the synodality is being reinvented, which was a model in the very early stage and phase of our church, when it was still one, so to say, or completely in one right, is now rediscovered, and we have now a so-called, what we call synodic path, which is an official movement within our church, connecting bishops and laity for an official process and development to look together and to reinvent where we should go, the next steps for the future and so on. The same is in my own diocese in Aachen. We call it the synodic process. So we are back to synodality, but still do not have experience, and so we are learning. And we are really inspired. I personally was inspired from the Chevetogne meetings and discussions and so on, and prayers, which I attended actually 2 or 3 times.
Thank you, Alois. And there is a compliment on synodality from Richard in the Zoom chat, who says the trajectory of the eparchy seems to indicate that the communities are at the core of synodality, while we in the Western churches mainly look at synodality as a method of administration.
Agree.
Any comments on this?
No, I agree. I just agree. This is that's true. Yeah, but we have. That's what I say. We come from the 2 edges, so to say, with the same problems, the same visions and hopes that we would renew our calling, and then also the outreach, the missionary outreach, and our service and the ministry to the people. Not only to the people who are already belonging to the churches, and this is, so to say, the common concern of all churches, be it Western, be it Eastern, and we can learn from both traditions. but I would fully agree with the statement of Richard.
Thank you, Alois. Now it's 8:06 in Paris. We have roughly 10 minutes before the end of this round table. I can see that Volodymyr is raising his hand, and we have a question from Bogdan Zapotichny. So maybe we will take these two questions or remarks before the concluding statement of Archbishop Boris. So Bogdan is asking, here in Ukraine we have plenty of problems in society, including high abortion and divorce rates. Also many people have problems with drugs and alcohol, and of course high corruption rate. In my opinion, the only way to deal with such problems is to strengthen the influence of church and its doctrine on the society. But how we can do if we see strong opposition from the huge part of society, even on such initiatives as introducing in education classes on Christian ethics and the foundations of the family? Thank you. Who wants to answer this question? Maybe Andriy?
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I agree, because yeah, all the social problems, in a sense, have spiritual background. Ukraine as a country has like corruption, family issues, etc. It has because if it has it higher, then because the peculiar history of Ukraine is with the Soviet past, and the Soviet past is not just the experiments in economy. First of all, these were experiments in spiritual sphere. So what we are lacking the foundations of our morals. We want, for example, that people don't give or take bribes, but they lack motivation to do this. They lack understanding why they shouldn't. The same is about family issues. The crisis of family, or whatever high level of dependencies like alcohol, drugs, it's mainly because of the spiritual vacuum, because of the feeling of meaningless of the life which people are experiencing. And this is what Christianity brings to us. Brings us, first of all, the profound feeling of that your life is not in vain, that you are needed, that you have vocation, you have calling, you have something to do in your life, you have project. If you understand this, it's easier to overcome your weaknesses, to overcome difficulties, and to fight with social issues. So foundations of morals, main principles which are in the core of social teaching of the church, is really something which I think we shall struggle for and shall try to educate people and to make them feel. And this is how I like the Eparchy was doing, because these were the living principles, principles which were not just taught, but lived out for other people and being open to for other people to join. Thank you.
Volodymyr?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick short comment, basically reflecting on what just Andriy has said, and also Myroslav before that. I was also kind of very much impressed with the way kind of simplicity entered into the life of Eparchy. I mean, especially in view of the magnitude of the challenges in 5 countries and almost like an impossibility to decide where you have to start and what to do. And then I think what has happened, simple ideas like the hospitality, just to kind of rebuild, create a small structure where you could practice your hospitality and friendship. I think that was something which was kind of growing. I mean, that was from my viewpoint, that was how the vision was kind of built. It's of sharing the food, sharing the friendship. I think this was amazing how those kind of very simple things they enabled just to move very large and big structures. So that's how they kind of all kind of geopolitical, so to speak, changes started. That was kind of my impression, which I very much kind of liked and very much enjoyed by kind of visiting Bishop Boris and Paris and meeting friends and colleagues there. Thank you.
Thank you, Volodymyr. Archbishop Boris, now the floor is yours for the concluding statement.
Well, it's great to see all of you. Thank you, Oleh, for moderating, and I thank Volodymyr and all the board members of the International Institute for Ethics and Contemporary Issues for your friendship, for the different conferences that you organized both in Paris and in Lviv. I think there were 3 over the years that the filming was happening. And I thank you for your participation today. There were, Czeslaw was asking about the 11 countries represented, you know, at the Sobor. In fact, yeah, there were only 80 people there, but it was very international. And in fact, there were 8 languages that were used. There were 3 kind of official languages, English, French, and Ukrainian for the proceedings. And then during the coffee breaks, people discussed in Dutch, German, Italian, Polish, and Russian. I think the creativity and the openness was almost a must. It was do or die. And to answer Myroslav's question, vision was, of course, necessary, and inspiration. The numbers were very few. A vision and inspiration are, I think, essential. And it's good to have big numbers, but it's terrible to have big numbers when there is no vision or inspiration, or if there is anti-vision and anti-inspiration. And Paris began very simply. Many of you remember and know, but its annual budget was 35,000 euros, supporting the bishop, all staff, there was no staff, and all activity in 5 countries. In fact, in 3 of the countries, there was no activity. I mean, Switzerland, there were 2 divine liturgies per year. And what was necessary was inspiration of the people that joined the team, a vision that was shared and elaborated together. But also there was outside inspiration and outside vision. This would never have happened if it had not been for the support of Porticus and Adrian Slavodsky. Eventually other donors like the Zahoris joined, the Ivanchiks, and many other people that felt at home in Paris, although they lived in different countries or even on different continents, and joined our community. It kind of, we were connected before the coronavirus as people are being more and more connected through the quarantine. It was a wonderful experience because those who were contributing, they felt the vision, and they felt the possibility, the potential. And that is something that you know, was first experienced from those donors at the Ukrainian Catholic University. They believed and felt the vision before the reality materialized and participated in its development. So that is something to really be celebrated, and also to be continued, because it's a very good question that Kun Jacobs is the personnel director for the Brussels Malines Archdiocese. He's a deacon who participated in our meetings in Shefton, and he also celebrates biritually. He knew us well, but he was an outsider looking in. He's also in the movie, I think. Petro Didula captured, I think, essential aspects of the life of our eparchy. I don't know if everybody remembers that it was over a 3-year period that he came to visit and to film. So this was something that was digested. It had fermented. It had given different fruits. It was pruned. The movie was both a labor of love, but it was a labor of perspective, and also a very careful, let's say, arrangement and editing. And Petro, I really want to welcome you and congratulate you in front of this audience, because you actually became very much a part of this synodality. Now, one of the things that is so important about the movie is that it shares this experience. We are overwhelmed by information, and if you don't see it, if you don't hear about it, if you are not brought into it by art and music and by symbol, it's not easy today to translate experiences, intuitions, visions, inspirations. And I think that this movie is very, very important for that. And I want to thank everybody for participating today, because we are multiplying that communicative effect by our discussion. What is this communication, this vision, and this inspiration up against? Well, in the Paris Eparchy, it's up against the challenge to continue, to develop, to adjust to new needs. And we all know that this past year has created new needs and new challenges in every circumstance in every country, and in the church as well, Paris Eparchy included. But there's also another challenge, and the jury is out whether it will be met or whether there will be a response. Since this movie has been made, I think this is a subjective evaluation from a distance, and not after, a scientific study. But I think in the last 3.5 months, given the 36 eparchies in the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, pound for pound, the Paris Eparchy has responded to the spiritual challenges of COVID and the quarantine better than any eparchy in our church. I wish that we had that, let's say, vision and inspiration, the synodality that reflects the Paris response and Paris action. The movie is called Synodality in Action, and there was synodality in action during this quarantine. From Lourdes, there were 5 onlines every day. Bishop Lviv from Paris, from that little chapel in that house of dreams, where the child crawls in the movie, he had two onlines, Divine Liturgy and Vespers in the evening with a sermon. Father Roman and Father Yuri, both in the movie, they had a biblical study. I should mention it was Father Mikhail Romanyuk in Lourdes that would have five onlines every day. Matins, Divine Liturgy, he had a service to the Mother of God, Vespers, and the Rosary. He had 400 people participating every night in his Rosary. So there were the Bible studies. There was a weekly meeting of the youth group. All the priests gathered whenever the bishop called them together, and there was some priestly meeting every week. So the synodality continued, and I think it models something for the rest of our church, but also for our sister churches. And it's not clear whether that can be compellingly communicated. I think this movie helps, such discussions help. And I'm not sure that will necessarily be received because there needs to be a shift. There needs to be a different, there needs to be a Francis moment, or the continuation of the Francis moment. There needs to be a reconsideration of episcopal style, episcopal leadership, episcopal accompaniment, the role of priests, the role of women, the role of laity in general, the welcoming of youth and children, and the capacity to really live that in a joyful way, not in an administrative way or, let's say a strictly canonical way, but as Jesus lived with his disciples, as Paul lived with, the churches that he founded. I find that there's fear of synodality. I think there's fear of this freedom. It's unusual. It kind of melts some of the, let's say, structures and pedestals, and there will be need to be, a gentle process to share it, to help people understand that these are some of the aspects that are essential to the kingdom that Jesus preaches. I think our visitors were inspired. One participant in one of our meetings is now the head of the French Bishops' Conference. I mentioned Kun, who does the human resources management of the Belgian diocese. One diocese that really plugged in was the diocese in Western Belgium of Liège. Quite regularly, the Vicar General would come along with a team of other people to participate. And of course, a great host, but also, let's say, a participant and I would say communicator in some ways of our synodal process and of this style, if you will, was the monastery of Shevton and the monastery of Orvadu, where we met at different times. My experience is that when it comes to the human heart and conversion and human development, there is no Nescafe, powder, boiling water, and instant gratification. It takes time. It takes time. The seeds need to be sown. Often kind of very inspiring and life-giving experiences are appreciated after the death of those who were directly involved. So, we're still all living. We should be grateful. But I just think that the numbers, Myroslav, are not that important. It wasn't important for Jesus. It wasn't important for Paul in the first century. In the 21st century, it was not decisive for the underground church in Ukraine. We studied it together with Oleh and our colleagues for the last quarter century. And out of 3,000 priests in 1939 and 1989, there were 300 left, 70-year-olds, in a cohort population, in a population where men die on average at the age of 65. So this cohort of priests that was average age 70 was already 5 years too old. Those 300 priests ideally could serve 100 people in the underground with some regularity. You're at 30,000 at maximum out of 4 million before the war. So that's less than 1% was left. And yet today there are again now 3,000 priests, and this church is big, which does not necessarily mean that it does not have problems. I think it has very serious problems. I think we step back from the simplicity of the underground too quickly. and with a nostalgia for the past structures, especially since the nostalgia had to go back to the 1930s, we slowed down in our development and took on a lot of weight that will not help us in the 21st century. But I think this experiment of the Paris Eparchy that was so generously supported by the Institute, by our speakers today, many of our listeners, by Porticus, by Adrian Slavodsky, by the Ivanchiks, by the Zahuris and others, it merits a movie. I thank Petro Didula that he made the movie. And I think it merits these kinds of discussions, and I hope they will continue. I hope that in the United States, this movie can be seen, that it can be discussed, digested, and that we can gain some maybe vision and inspiration from this experience. How a little David grew, and how he didn't really have to fight Goliath. He didn't engage in a dialectic. He just grew and lived in peace and joy. Thanks God. Thanks be to God for that, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Archbishop Boris, for this concluding statement. And our roundtable is over now. Thank you very much to all of you. We are ending our Facebook live stream. And the full recording of the roundtable can still be found on the Facebook page of the IECI. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day, and God bless you all.